When Craig had reached out to me, um, that's my cuckoo indicating it is now 10 o'clock, a little late. When he reached out about, speaking on a topic, and I was just trying to think, and so I thought it might be interesting as a topic to just look at and talk about worship during a pandemic. And the little description I wrote up for it was that March 8th was the last Sunday of our normal Sunday worship lineup with the 8:30 service, 9:45, and 11:10. And we also had at that point we also were because that was I believe that was the maybe second Sunday of Lent, March 8th, and we had started a Sunday evening Vespers service like we had done in the fall of 2019. That was happening in Spellman Hall with worship followed by a meal. And so that was March 8th. On March 9th, I flew to Honduras with I think just two other individuals from Westminster, and we were there from Monday through Friday, the 13th. And I guess appropriately in that time, I felt like the world changed in that week. I mean, each day we didn't have much internet access on our cell phones until the evening when we would return to the place we were staying. And so once we had signal, updates just kept popping up on our phone about, this was closing. And, I think at that point it was like the NCAA March Madness tournament was canceled, and other just large events were being canceled all over the place. NBA was, kind of postponing their games. I think the first cases in the Westchester School District happened that week. And I think on Thursday, the 12th, we found out that the neighboring country of El Salvador was completely closing their borders. And as often happens, kind of like, I think, when Pennsylvania pays attention to what New Jersey and other surrounding states do, and sometimes they can use neighboring states as kind of a standard setting. Our hosts were very concerned because they said, often Honduras will follow suit with what El Salvador does and vice versa. So they were very worried that we would get out of the country. And fortunately we did with no issues. But Sunday, the 15th, Honduras closed their borders. And so I remember talking with Rachel before that trip and just saying, are you concerned about about me going out of the country right now? I mean, at that point, it was still, I don't know how much we perceived as to what was coming. Obviously not. I think, I don't know that any of us could have predicted what we've now been living through. And so today I wanted to just look at, kind of I guess, behind the scenes, under the hood, if you will, as what worship looks like, kind of what the challenges have been. I think if I could summarize the challenge as succinctly as I could, I would say it's been an enormous technical challenge, and just so we've been stretched, I think, very, very broadly to try to meet the technological challenges, which now have, I think, just been multiplied because we're only streaming. And so I think that I wanted to show, this is, I think, a commercial from a long time ago. I don't even know what product it's advertising, but I thought it was a pretty appropriate metaphor for what we've been going through.
Some people like to climb mountains. I like to build planes in the air.
I grew up wanting to be on a wing, wanting to be up this high.
Sometimes the temperature up at altitude will reach 60 below. It's brisk, it's refreshing.
You never know what you're going to come across up here.
Canadian geese, mallards, owls. These people back here, that's why I come to work. That's why I build airplanes in the sky.
We're not just building a plane here. We're building a dream.
I love this job.
I get a lot of thanks up here. When I look over there and I see that little kid, the look in his eyes, that's all the thanks I need.
So that's kind of what it feels like. You know, the plane has taken off. It's already been in the air, and then all of a sudden, you know, March 15th, we show up, and you know, we're the only ones in the building, and so we're like, what does this mean, and what do we need to do differently now that we really have one congregation or, you know, audience, and that's and so right now the entire worship experience is happening, is being mediated through whatever device people happen to be on. I will say it was incredibly fortunate for us that we started live streaming prior to all this. You know, a lot of churches found themselves in the situation where, you know, they did not have the technology in place. They didn't have, you know, whatever kind of infrastructure they needed, or the staff to pull it off. It's incredibly challenging if you don't have a Lynn George, you know, or some volunteers that are already familiar with the equipment. You're in a very, very tough position. Pretty early on into this, I came across a quote from a Lutheran pastor, and I'll paraphrase it, but essentially it said, right now, pastors, and I would expand it probably to really any church staff are spending twice as much time doing things they're half as good at, without any of the relational reward that typically comes from being, you know, from doing ministry together. And that really resonated with me, because I felt like, you know, a lot of the relational aspects of not just worship, but ministry in general, were all of a sudden kind of vanished. And now we're spending a lot of time thinking about technical aspects, in addition to just safety and health protocols, which was, you know, we've always thought about that at various times, especially in flu season, but I mean, it's just obviously really, really ramped up. I'm going to share, I have not a ton of slides today, but I've just put together a few things for us to look at. And can everyone see? Sometimes I have issues if I expand this slide and then I can't see my notes anymore. So I'm going to leave it like that, and hopefully y'all can see. So this is just a brief general timeline to kind of show where we've come from and you know, just what's happened. So as I said, March 15th was the first Sunday where the only worship was live streamed. We ended up essentially canceling that in-person Vespers service. Though I will say, by the end of March, I began to do an evening prayer just over Zoom, that was kind of, it was using the Book of Daily Prayer that's part of our Book of Common Worship. So that was kind of in order to provide some opportunity in place of the Vespers services that had been scheduled. But if you remember, you know, prior to COVID, the only service that we were streaming was the 9:45. And so, you know, March 15th, as you know, I think session met Thursday night, March, what was that? That would have been, I guess, March 12th. And I think they approved a motion to suspend in-person worship for March 15th and March 22nd, with the assumption that would be reassessed after that. So after that first Sunday, we streamed the 9:45 service. There was no contemporary service. I think we all it quickly dawned on us that, you know, this is not going to be a 1 or 2 week, probably not even a month. And, you know, we really felt like we had to provide a contemporary service as well to stream that, so that we didn't, you know, completely you know, neglect that worshiping community. And I guess without going into too much detail about it, the reason we hadn't been streaming the contemporary service was more just there's a little bit more of a technical challenge in getting good sound quality for that service with the instrumentation and with the band. And so, but anyway, we were like, well, this is as good a season as any to just jump into it again, kind of the let's jump on this plane while it's flying and try to build it. And so March 22nd, we started streaming both the 9:45 and the 11:10 service. And one big discovery along the way, as we were, you know, on the plane building it, if you recall, if you watched if you worship at 9:45 early on for the first few months, it was longer than I thought it was. When we would sing hymns and have calls to worship and prayers of confession, you know, you would see the person speaking or singing on camera, and then but then the words would show up full screen, or if it was a hymn, you would see the melody and the words taking up the full screen. You could still hear the audio of what was going on. So one thing we learned, you know, down the road, as you know, one of the things we've been doing pretty constantly is just looking at other churches' streams and what they're doing, and are there things we can learn or things we could do better to improve it. Well, a big discovery in on May 17th, this was the first Sunday that we introduced what we could call lower thirds overlay, where now during the call to worship and the liturgy and the hymns, we can put text over top of the camera feed so that you can, you know, see Bob singing as well as see the lyrics, you know, displayed underneath. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Like, and you might, maybe you noticed that when it happened, like, oh, you know, now I can actually see the person singing and I can also see the words. So that was kind of a nice discovery of how we could do both at the same time. In September, we held 2 outdoor services, one on the 13th, one on the 27th. We had great weather for both of those. I don't know if any of you were able to come to those. And that was, you know, that was the first time really that, I mean, that was the largest, you know, gathering that we've had throughout this whole time. And I remember it kind of dawning on all of us as people were gathering in the parking lot, you know, like, we haven't seen each other since March. And it was just a very emotional experience of seeing people gather. And unfortunately, we had a third one planned that was canceled because it was pretty awful rainy weather. In October, we began having limited in-person opportunities. So this included our Wednesday midweek. It had been called the chapel service. We still kind of refer to it that way, although we're doing it in the sanctuary now, just because we can do it more safely, and because we have the technology to live stream that service. Groups could also meet in the church in limited numbers, so certain Bible studies, book groups, things like that. Also our Taizé service, which is once a month. People attended those in October and in November. In November, Session approved a pilot program to expand in-person worship. You know, and so elders and deacons, trustees, and some ushers were coming the first few Sundays of November to get an idea of, whenever it is that we begin having more people present, just what are the things that need to be in place? How can we refine our protocols? And also just, we wanted to gather some feedback from them on just what is the experience of worship. But unfortunately, that was shut down at the most recent session meeting, just in light of the rising number of cases. And I don't know about you all, but I mean, we're certainly noticing that, you know, the knowledge of folks that have tested positive with COVID, it seems like it's kind of getting closer and closer into our circles, and so we've had to just, I think, raise our level of caution for that. There are, however, right now times that can be registered for to come and pray in the sanctuary. And then, you know, next on our radar is Christmas Eve, obviously a huge and just hugely important and holy day for us, in which we would normally have, you know, a few thousand people over the course of the day. And so you might have seen this in print, but and I announced it on Sunday. We're doing you know, the 10 a.m., which is normally a children and family service. They're putting together a virtual Christmas pageant. So different households they have a script, and they're going to film their own little segments, and then Lynn is going to put it all together into a pageant. The contemporary service will live stream at 3. There will be a traditional service, which will include some clips from previous years from the chancel choir, as well as the youth choir. And then our hope, you know, we're hoping we can at 5 o'clock have a short outdoor service near the front portico, which would include a reading and the singing of Silent Night. And then from 1 to 2 on Christmas Eve, people can drive into the front entrance and pick up candles for Christmas Eve. So that's just an overview, I guess, of just where we've been. In some ways, it kind of feels like we've come full circle with where we are now. And that's just in response to what's happening around us and the efforts to do things safely. I'm gonna try to allow some time for questions at the end. So if you do have questions, just maybe jot them down, and then I'll try to make sure that we have some time. I thought it might be interesting. Some of you might know some of this, and some of you maybe have even volunteered in some aspects of these. But you know, you hear the joke about, you know, how many Presbyterians does it take to change a light bulb or something like that. Well, how many Presbyterians does it take to live stream a service? So this is pretty much, well, the first 4 of these that you see on the screen are essential. Well, with the exception maybe of the second one, and I'll walk through each of these. But these are the roles. These are typically filled by volunteers, and maybe a combination of volunteers and staff right now. We have Pro Presenter, which is the name of the computer program that will display lyrics, videos. It's sort of like PowerPoint. It's just a presentation software. It's a little more robust, but it's also designed specifically for use by churches for worship, because it integrates with a lot of other things that are helpful. So Pro Presenter is at a computer in the back corner of the sanctuary. The house soundboard, that refers to the soundboard that is also in that back sound booth in the corner of the sanctuary, and that controls the audio for the sanctuary. Now, it's not really that crucial anymore because there's no one in the room. When we had limited in person, it was crucial to have somebody there so that they could control the sound that people hear in the room and to make sure that there's no feedback. You know, when you only have 25 people in that sanctuary, it doesn't take long. If you crank the volume of a mic with all that wood, it doesn't take long for feedback to start happening. So it was good to have someone there. And sometimes one person can do both of those roles, you know, the Pro Presenter and the house sound, because, you know, another thing we're always mindful about is the proximity of those volunteers. It's hard to socially distance, you know, especially in that space. So if we can get away with not having 2 people, we will. And then in the front corner of the sanctuary is the production room. It's also where a lot of our equipment is stored, a lot of the mic cables and things like that. There's a separate soundboard that controls what you hear if you're watching the live stream on your TV or your phone, whatever it might be. And the reason there's separate soundboards is just because they're going to 2 different places. You have to kind of mix them uniquely, and so that's a separate soundboard. And then there's also someone in that room who's controlling the cameras, as well as if we have a video to display, they will bring that video source into the stream. So those are kind of the 4 that are crucial. It's also nice to have someone who can float back and forth. One of the biggest technical challenges right now is those spaces are not close together. It would be really helpful if they could all talk to each other in real time, because often there are timing issues, which I'll get into in a little bit. And so it'd be really nice if they could just say, like, are you ready for this video clip? Yes, okay, go ahead. So sometimes what that is it's Lynn or me or somebody that's kind of running back and forth, trying to figure out what's going on, or if there are any issues. And let me just see, I had maybe we'll show well, I think I'll show. Let me stop this presentation real quick, and we'll do a one of our volunteers who's now in college is Maddie Perkins, and a while back she made a really helpful video on our production room. So I'll show that.
Hi, I'm Maddie Perkins, and I am one of our live stream tech crew here at Westminster.
Can you hear
I'm kind of going to be taking you through what we do behind the scenes, what you might see on the stream, how we go through about turning on our system, the camera angles, and what kind of preparation we have to do before the stream. So when we walk
Since this video was made, we try to keep it a little more tidy.
Packets of paper here. This one is kind of our setup of what the entire service is going to look like. So we have notes for our sound team here, as in terms of where people are going to be, what mics need to be turned on, what number lav mics the pastors are going to be on, and things. And then we also have notes for the streaming. So if we have words that have to be on the screen for people to read off of, or different hymns and things like that on the screen, we can know when those are coming up so we can put them on the stream, as well as kind of where people are going to be during the service, so we can make sure we have a camera on somebody and we're not just hearing voices out of nowhere. We also will get a copy of the sermon for the day, so that we can kind of follow along, see how long is left, see where the pastors are in the sermon as well. So when we get in here, we just kind of like to look at those 2 things, see how the service is going to go, take notes, our own notes if we have to, about what camera angles we might want to set up before we go live, and things like that. So in terms of turning on our system, we want to first turn on our computer monitors here with these little buttons in the right hand corner. And while those are powering up, we want to turn on this box right here, which will control our camera angles and our different presets for the cameras and everything that you need to do positioning camera wise. Our stream will already be set up for you. So in terms of actual camera angles, we have on this side of our monitor is our program. So this is what is actually going out to the stream, what people are seeing. Whereas on preview here is what only we can see. So this is where we can kind of set up our camera angles, make sure they're perfect before we put them on program so that everybody can see them. So in terms of actually editing our camera angles and stuff, we first want to make sure, so this preview camera right here is set on camera 2, and you can see that right here, it's boxed in green. So we can edit camera 2 on here. So we want to make sure that camera 2 is selected, and we can use this knob right here to move it left, right, up, down, wherever you might want to go, as well as this little toggle right here, which will allow you to get more wide or more zoomed in depending on the type of shot you need. So more wide might give you a better angle of the entire congregation or everything going up on stage, whereas a little bit more zoomed in might give you a better look at the pastors doing the sermon, somebody at the lectern, even Glenn playing the organ. And we can also do that with camera one, should we have it on preview. And how you switch from preview to program is we're going to do it on here. So this is our...
I'm gonna stop that video there. She goes in a little bit, but I want to just give you an idea if you've never been in that production room and just to see what all is in there and what goes into it. It's pretty sophisticated equipment and really requires a a coordinated effort on everyone's part who's doing the the live streaming. Now, I don't know if you all have seen any of these, but and it's funny, I would never have described preparing for worship and just getting ready for a service to begin. I would never have described the feeling as one of being nervous. I do feel that that's kind of changed when no one's in the room, and I think we're just much more aware that I never really thought all that hard about the cameras before because the majority of people were in the room. And now I think it's just kind of more, and speaking my own experience, but it's definitely more on my mind that, okay, this is camera. I got to make sure I'm standing in the right place. I got to make sure I'm looking at, the right one, or, especially if there's multiple cameras, things like that. So I periodically, and I don't know that we all knew she was doing this, but Lynn George has been, and we have just hours and hours and hours of footage, some of which is not used, but Lynn has been compiling blooper reels throughout all these months. I don't know, have any of you seen them?
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they're very good. They're very humbling. I wanted to show one. I mean, just so it's just kind of funny, the stuff that now, the stuff that we never really had to think about. Obviously before we would say or pronounce things wrong, and probably most of the time we would just keep going, but there's just some kind of psychological thing that's happening where we know we can just edit it, or like we can just do another, we can try again. If it's not live, if it is live, obviously we would just keep going, but some of these things, and it's more with the music and things like that. So just if you haven't seen, I'll play the I'll do this is the most recent one. So mic's being turned on. That's kind of a classic pandemic.
Hey, let me try that again. There's another one for our bloopers reel.
I think this is just, getting the touch for the cameras is kind of a challenge.
We lament in order to hope. Whoops.
Oh, so here, we'll come back to that.
Friends, hear this charge and benediction.
Oh, this, I don't know. This is a good one. I don't remember which Sunday this was, but as you know, we've made it, or when I say we, I mean all of the singers and Lynn and Bob have made some of these videos where people record themselves from their home or wherever, submit their video, Lynn puts them together. But we've also at times been doing things like the Gloria Patri, where Bob's singing it. On this particular Sunday, I'm going to say it's a Sunday that I was away, because it never would happen if I was there. Right. There was some communication where, or just miscommunication, where there was a quartet, I believe, singing that day, and they were planning to sing the Gloria Patri live, but the previous week we had used this video, and I don't think that video got removed, and so you can hear the two are happening at the same time, and it was not a joyful noise. So that was a good one.
Hi everyone, my name is China Hart and I am the graduate.
Scroll that video. We have a minute permission today.
This is one where I just forgot that we had a minute permission, and
sing together, arise, arise, my soul.
Whoop.
Oh, two, God. Somebody needs to change that.
Typos and.
Oh, I can't do this. I gotta start all over. Sorry.
Was it obvious I hit my face on my mic?
Sometimes mics aren't on when you need them to be on, and
Then be that my vision.
I will also say that there's
Online,
something.
Send a check.
There's something about I will say kind of not having congregants in the room before worship happens has kind of brought out the the mischief or just the general some shenanigans among us all.
What a thrilling first half. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, homeless Jesus.
Now this is an example of the kind of the coordination that can sometimes just not happen. So I think in that video, Maddie Perkins mentioned that we always provide a copy of our sermons to the people that are in the production room. Especially, it's important if we want a photo displayed. So this was, I think it was the last time I had preached, and I had an image I wanted shown of this homeless Jesus statue. And so in my script, I put in parentheses, display photo here. Well, I think somehow by the second service, those sheets were either shuffled or not in order or just MIA. And so it did not happen when I thought it was going to happen.
Timothy Schmaltz strikes again, and we have an image of this sculpture.
So sometimes you try to give subtle clues or pleas to have that
in front of the church grounds. And this story might sound familiar because Don Lincoln shared.
And then here's another example of just something that can happen if the coordination is off. So right now you can see the image that I want to display, but you can also see this kind of ghost-like remnant of my body behind it. And what's happening here is the same feature that allows us to put words and lyrics at the bottom of the screen while still seeing us on camera. You really can't. That is enabled by this one button. It's called the downstream key, and basically what that does is if you're on the cameras, if you activate this key, it will also bring in the input from the computer, which if it's just those lyrics at the bottom of the screen, it looks nice because we've formatted it very specifically. But if you try to put an image over top of it, you get something like this, and it just it looks kind of goofy.
About this, gotta take the downstream button off. Don Lincoln shared a story about this a few years back. But this time it had happened in Davidson, North Carolina.
So what it should look like,
me
I
about
think it happens here in a second.
Chapter in the statue's story.
It should look like that, where you don't
Eternal
see me
God,
at all.
we rejoice to know of all who through the ages. I'm going to do that again since I messed that word up.
Amen.
You know, one thing we try to avoid is a large chunk of time where you're seeing absolutely nothing. This is like the ex nihilo moment where it's just, it was a great and spacious void. Or we try to, you know, actually find where the person is playing the instrument. So you know, it's been, I'm glad in some ways it's been nice to be able to look back at these and to not take ourselves too seriously. Oh, but so here, I've mentioned this a couple of times, this bottom thirds. This is what I mean, you know, where you can see the text, but you can also see the cameras. And, you know, Lynn and I spent you know, maybe an hour or so. We had to get this shade of blue at just the right, you know, transparency, so that you could still kind of see what's behind that blue box. And but anyway, so like I said, this stretch of time has it's really presented a lot of things that I guess have been good in retrospect, to try to kind of refine our just what we're putting out there. But I guess it just kind of shows that there's a lot of different things that that can go wrong. One thing, I don't know, you might not have caught this. I was trying to hide it, but on, I think this was on a Sunday in June, I had forgotten my bulletin in the office, and the prelude was going on, and I was doing the announcements. And it's just, you know, obviously it's nice to have the bulletin, so, you know, a lot of times we'll make notes of, you know, what different parts of the service I'm leading. And so if you don't have that, and it's all in your head and you're preaching, I mean, you're gonna forget something. So I was like, I need my bulletin. So I literally ran full speed from the pulpit to the office, you know, by like Barb Drain's desk, and then full speed back. And I think I got back into the pulpit, you know, maybe like 30 seconds before the prelude ended. And I felt like I had just run a marathon. And I don't know, you might just be able to tell.
Amen.
Get a little winded.
Welcome to worship this Lord's Day at Westminster Presbyterian Church. My name is John Frost, and I am one of the pastors. I'm joined in the service by Pastor Don Lincoln and Jenny Clark, and then our musicians today. We have several that you'll see.
Yeah, so I was completely out of breath.
Need an oxygen tank in the pulpit.
Yeah, it would have been nice that day. So just, you know, a lot of things happen behind the scenes that don't ever make it, unless they make it into the blooper reel, of course, which we now know about. You know, another aspect, I wanted to just show you, one second. I've mentioned ProPresenter a couple of times, and I wanted to show you what that looks like. Now, ProPresenter as a program, we used it pretty thoroughly at the contemporary service, because all of the songs and pretty much everything that was happening in the contemporary service was happening through ProPresenter. At the traditional service, we would use ProPresenter if we were ever displaying videos. I think towards, you know, by the time we got right before the pandemic, I think, you know, we were using ProPresenter more extensively, even at the traditional, as we started adding hymn lyrics and the calls to worship and things like that. Especially once we started live streaming, once we started live streaming, we really were starting to put every service element. You can hear some of my coworkers in the background probably. We started live streaming, and that kind of forced us to really think about, if someone's, and we always had a decent amount of people who were live streaming. It's like, we really need to make sure they have all of what they need to participate. So the liturgy, the spoken liturgy, the lyrics, things like that. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do just want you to see what it looks like. If someone's operating ProPresenter, let's just look at the traditional service as an example. You've got, these are the scrolling announcements that you see before worship, and they are on a set timer, and they will just continue to loop until you tell them to do something else. Right now, part of our protocol is we're recording the music separately, just to avoid having anybody without a mask, singing with others that are also unmasked, that are not part of their household. So this is a video of Glenn playing the prelude. You'll see a lot of the just black slides, and these are just blank slides. So for example, if this video is playing, we want it to nicely transition to a black slide or just a blank slide, and that will give the camera person a chance to then shift it back to the cameras. We've got these Advent candle videos that are happening right now. Here is the prayer of confession from this past week, and so you can see this format. Obviously, this dark space here, that would actually, once it reaches your TV or your phone or your computer, you would see the camera angle of whoever is leading that particular prayer. And then we have the song after the assurance, the declaration of faith, the Lord's Prayer here, and then this offering here. But anyway, so this is, you kind of go through the whole service, and there's, now we're at the point where pretty much every service element has something that needs to be displayed from ProPresenter. And so as you can see, a lot goes into what you see, and a lot can go wrong. And so, kind of like I said at the beginning, I think the biggest challenge throughout this season, one of the biggest challenges, at least the one that I think immediately presents itself, is the technical aspect. One interesting thing I think, is the average worship attendance throughout these months. And these numbers represent IP addresses. So they're not necessarily individuals. Like, before, people, the ushers would count who was in the sanctuary. These just represent IP addresses. So it could be like, if you're in your house and you're watching it with your spouse, or if a family is all gathered around a TV, that could be 4 or 5 people, but just one IP address. Pretty much all across the board, our average attendance is higher than it had been. I think we're seeing, people from outside of the state as well. And so it's been interesting to monitor those numbers and to think about, what will happen when we're no longer in person, but we're still live streaming, and how do we continue to adapt to the situations that we're in. I will say, I spent a lot of time, most of it, talking about the technical challenges. I think throughout everything, I think we're constantly thinking about just more theological questions and more, formation questions. how can worship continue to be formative and meaningful when we're not gathered together? Questions like, what does it mean to share communion together when we're all in different locations? And I think there's none that I have great answers to. I think they're just things that we're constantly wrestling with. We haven't had a chance to sing together in a really long time, and those are things that I know we all miss, and just the experience of being together and worship. I mean, as good and as slick and as error or just goof free that a live stream could be, it never can create, I think, the sense of community like being together would. So I think there are some strengths. I think we were in a good position to adapt into this season. But believe me, I mean, I will welcome the day when it's no longer the case, and I think we're all eagerly awaiting that day. But it's interesting. I mean, just even the experience of communion. I've seen a lot of pictures that people have sent in to Lynn. I think some of the most beautiful pictures have been through just seeing families gather around whatever they've created as kind of their sacred space on a communion Sunday, and seeing a 10-year-old kind of pass around bread to the family, or to pass around the cup that is shared. I've got to think that those moments are forming children. I mean, I think a lot about how kids are experiencing this time, especially in worship, that they're experiencing worship in a completely unique way. And the longer this goes on, I think it's going to feel strange for them to go back to where they aren't right up at the table, they aren't touching the bread, and they aren't. And so it's interesting to me to think about what worship will look like on the other side of this. Like I said, I think it's nothing that I think I have an answer to. I think it's just things that we're constantly wondering about. But that's enough for me. I know I hopefully didn't bore you with a lot of details. You probably don't get a chance to see behind the scenes of what it takes to put it together. And if you've ever thought like, wow, they really seem like they have it together, hopefully I've destroyed that notion and have left you with no illusions about that. But I want to leave some time if you have any questions or just comments. As people, I love, would love to hear any just observations you have who have been streaming, on the other side of it too.
Well, thanks, John. That was terrific. I think we've all wondered about what that room on the side of the sanctuary looks like, where all this
the wizard
happens. Yeah, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz back there. I mean, it's been terrific. The other thing I'd like to say, and please take this back to the other pastors. I think one thing that's been great is that in spite of the COVID, in spite of all the technical issues and the problems, that the church has been able to function really pretty well, in the sense that we're still doing the journey classes on Sunday. We're still doing the Tuesday morning fellowship like this. The Bible study of Gathering of Men is still going on Wednesday nights. I mean, all these things, and I'm sure there's other Bible studies and other things going on in the church, but the fact we've been able to do all this with the COVID going on, I think is a testament both to the congregation and to the pastors that where there's a will, there's a way. That the people have needed those groups to go on, and we've done them, and we've needed you guys to be there to help, and you've been there. And I think it's been a real team effort to keep this church together and to keep going the way it has.
Yeah, John, I would sorry.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much.
John, I think it's a testimony to the pastoral staff and all those that participate in the worship service on the presenting it to us. When I see it on the screen, it looks like you're talking to us and not talking to a camera. It doesn't look staged for just about across the board. Do a great job of making it look personal.
Well, thank you. That's encouraging to hear. I will say it's
gotta be hard.
I mean, every week it still is such a strange thing to to look out and really, and even now we're trying, whoever else, like if all the pastors are involved in the 9:45 or 11:10, if we're not actively speaking, we're now pretty much, almost in the narthex, we've set up some chairs because we're just, since whoever's speaking is not using a mask, and so it truly is almost empty now. But I think there's enough of a reservoir of connection and affection to know that when I'm looking into this camera, like, I know hundreds of people are looking through it at me, and so I think it definitely is. It's very real to us that this is the chance for connection that we have right now. And so and those are some of the questions early on, I think, that we wondered, like, does it ever feel like, is it ever weird that we're like looking the whole at the camera, like, if you were like in the room, obviously you couldn't look at everybody at the same time like that, but if you just stared at one person in the room, I mean, that would probably get a little weird at some point. But I think we've had enough encouragement to say, like, no, like, we really like it when you look at the camera. We've also gotten feedback that when you're done speaking, look away from the camera, because you kind of have like a deer in headlights look.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
if I'm,
I've noticed.
Kingdom now, forever glory, amen.
I have a question.
Waiting for the transition, waiting, please take the camera off me. So someone said, yeah, like, when you're done, just, look down or shuffle your papers. That would be a little more natural. So I think those kinds of things that we don't necessarily think about until we get feedback, and then I think we've tried to make some adjustments as we've gone.
What's going to happen this Christmas with the choir and the musical program that normally takes place during the Christmas season? Is there I think we've got the greatest musical directors that we could possibly have. And I would hope that we have an opportunity to see something and hear something during the Christmas era.
Well,
yeah. So this coming Sunday, the 13th, I think it will at 7 o'clock this coming Sunday. Bob and Glenn and some others have been working to put together a virtual Christmas concert. So what that will mean, as far as I understand it, and as I've heard Bob talk about it, is that will be a compilation. And probably some of you, if any of you know more about this than I do, feel free to share. But it will involve some clips from previous concerts, as well as, I think, at least one, possibly two newly created anthems, like you see where all the singers are kind of on their own window, where they've recorded it ahead of time, it's been submitted and then edited together. And they also have filmed a Christmas, like a reading of a Christmas story. So it will, as you watch it Sunday, and you can access it after 7 p.m. as well. It should be up. I would hope it'll be up for a couple of weeks at least. It will look like just kind of an edited together group of clips of different pieces. Obviously maybe the biggest challenge throughout this whole year has been the difficulty of providing music. It's all the experts and the research has shown that singing in a large group of people is one of the best ways to spread COVID. And so that's been one of the hardest things about this whole year, is because the music in this church is consistently one of the things that people say brought them here. It's one of the things that is the most, just continues to enrich this community. And so I think right from the beginning, when they had a requiem scheduled, I think, for March 22nd, and that was one of the first larger events that wasn't able to happen. And I think that really, I mean, that was just almost a very foreboding indicator of what was to come. And so, I mean, I think, you know, Bob and Glenn, and I know, like, I've tried as best I can with the 11:10 service and the Tuesday service to, you know, to try to keep things interesting. And, you know, I mean, it's a little easier with the 11:10 because we're not talking about 80 plus singers. We're in those circumstances, it might be 1 or 2 singers now, and now we're wearing masks for the 11:10. But yeah, so there will be a Christmas concert, a virtual Christmas concert. That will include past clips. That's this Sunday, and then Christmas Eve will also, the Christmas Eve services will include some clips of the choir from previous years. And so, yeah, that's been one of the hardest things, of just not being able to do music in the way that, to do music without limitations. I think I think in music and in the arts, the you know, the performative arts is where the limitations of COVID have been, I think, the most keenly felt.
Well, we're very lucky to have the great musicians that we do have.
Yeah. Yes, and many of whom, you know, continue to be willing to play their instruments, and to, you know, just to, you know, because I think for that, you know, a lot of the people that play, you know, that you see, you know, like Amy Flynn is an example, cellist who plays she plays at every one of our services on occasion. You know, a lot of them who play in these community orchestras, you know, they're not meeting either, and so a lot of their the things that used to give them life musically, you know, it's just not happening. And so they've all told us, like, thank you so much for the opportunity to play, because, you know, I miss it. And so I think everyone's really feeling, you know, grateful to at least provide something and to be able to do something. Dan Wilcox, I see you have a hand.
Yeah, John, first of all, thank you for what you prepared today. You are so accomplished. You even do bloopers well. So I appreciate that. A couple of comments. I appreciate you, all the training you've had as a musician. I only sing happy birthday, so I appreciate all that you do musically. Compare your training musically to the fact that now what you have to do from a technology point of view. That must have been quite a growth thing that you've gone through, from focusing on music to how much you have to focus on technology. That's my point one. The other point I wanted to make is, I think of watching an Eagles game, God help us all, I guess, or where you see they're used to playing for a whole audience, and it's just them out on the field, more or less. Or you watch The Voice on TV and they're singing to empty. I'm trying to make that point of what's it like, that difference of nobody in the congregation, few people in the congregation versus a whole congregation full. How do you make that difference?
Well, so with the first comment and question, yeah, I mean, and it's like anything. I mean, I think probably all of us have had to learn some new proficiency, or at least a level of proficiency on some technology, whether it's Zoom or, you know, if you want to be able to talk to your kids and grandkids, you probably had to learn something, and it's been frustrating. I mean, with music, yeah, I mean, I wish I had more of a background in video editing. I can do really, really basic stuff. You know, it's fortunate that Lynn is around, because Lynn has just incredibly valuable skills right now. I mean, one of the things I'd like to try to do in 2021 is to, you know, develop more, that I could do some of that editing to take some burden off of her. But also, if I have an idea of a thing, because right now, as cases are rising, understandably, some of the people that had pretty regularly volunteered have said, you know, I kind of want to I want to lay low for the rest of the month of December because I'd like to see my family for Christmas, and I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. And I understand that, and I respect that. And so then it becomes helpful to be able to say, all right, well, let's make a video where you each record your part, and then I'll put it together. Well, that's hours and hours and hours of work. I mean, we did a few of those videos for the Taizé service recently, and it would have taken us probably 10 minutes of actual recording time if we were all together. It ended up, it probably took about 3 hours to line all of those videos up exactly right, so that what you hear is what it would sound like live. If they're just a little bit off, you can tell. So it's been a learning curve and continues to be. And then with having no one in the pews, honestly, I think I feel that more acutely preaching, where you have no reactions from people, whether it's a part that's meant to be humorous. I mean, humor is really, you have no idea if it's landing when there's no one in the room. Was it a good story? Are people bored out of their mind? With music, my main experience with music right now, I guess with the 1110, we still have a comparably sized group that's playing the music. So I'm aware that the congregation is not there. I think it makes it a little easier at that service because we're still making music with a small group of people. So we don't, I think, feel that solitude like we do at 9:45. And especially if I'm sitting in the 9:45 as a participant, if the music's already been recorded, it's just coming on a video in the room. And so it's I guess so some of the energy is maybe not there. But that's a good question. I think we're just trying to be aware that that the congregation's out there even if we can't see them, and so we try to bring our best selves and to bring our own energy, knowing how badly people want to be in the room where we are. And I think we understand that we get to still be in the sanctuary on a regular basis, and so we don't we certainly don't take that lightly or for granted.
So there won't be any Christmas Eve services for music, will there? Like we had programs for Christmas music a couple nights a week before Christmas. It made them a few bucks too to have income, but that's not going to happen this year, I take it.
The Christmas concerts, is that what you're referring to? Yeah, right. Well, the virtual concert that I described, that's happening this Sunday, that's taking the place of those. It'll just be one date, but people can watch it whenever. It's just because it's not possible to do anything on that scale with that amount of people right now. So that's why they're using previous clips, and then they're making some new videos as well. So there'll be just one virtual concert live streamed Sunday, not the weekend, or not the 6 concerts spread over 2 weekends like there had been.
What time Sunday?
7 o'clock. But you can access it after the fact if you can't watch it live.
Mm-hmm.
One more comment. The fact that the church and the leaders chose to bring Lynn Charlton on staff at the time they did, that was certainly prophetic to some degree. I mean, it was good timing. And I'm part of her tech time every week. She does a wonderful job. And
yeah, she does.
So make that point, that how important that has been, and she just does a good job. And thank you and all the staff. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was, like I said, it was extremely fortunate. We were already in the streaming game, so to speak, a couple of years ago, and had already learned some of the early lessons that I think other places are having to learn. And we've been a resource to a lot of different churches who, you know, have come to us and said, hey, you know, do you have time for us to talk about like what equipment you have, like what would we need to do this? A lot of churches are doing streaming in a lot of different ways, depending on budgets and depending on size of the church. I mean, the nice thing is, you know, the technology has advanced so much that even if you're a very, very small church with a limited budget, you can make it happen. You know, you might not have multiple cameras and everything else, but you know, you can make it happen. I think that the church is resilient, and you know, we'll get through it.
John, I'd like to second the salute to all the ministers. You've done a terrific job of pulling everything together, coordinating the programs, the music, and the worship programs. I think it's been terrific. And I just have one biblical question to ask you. Who do you think should start on Sunday, Hurts or Wentz?
If it were up to me, I mean, it hurts me to no pun intended. You know, I was such a big Wentz fan, but I feel like you got to start Hurts. I mean, I feel like the team has not looked alive until the fourth quarter of last week's game. So
I agree.
I hate to say it because I do love Wentz and he's shown greatness at times, but it's just been miserable.
Brutal.
Yeah. So that's where I'd go.
Thanks
You're
again.
welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be with you all.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
job.
We didn't say a prayer at the beginning, but let's just say a quick little prayer here at the end. Thank you, Lord, for bringing John to us and for a very interesting and educational study about what goes on the technology side in our church. And as we go forward into this Christmas season, help us to keep our morale up, help us to be safe, help us to share our love with others. And may God appear once again on Christmas Day for all our lives. Amen.
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 Thanks, John, very much.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.
Is that Barbara there?